Welcome back into the ASUG News Studio. My name is Tom Welcome from asugnews.com. Well, we are delighted to be talking SAP Agile today. This is going to be a great session, and we're going to welcome in Melody Frinzell from Pacific Coast Companies. Welcome
Thank
back,
you.
I should say.
Yep, absolutely.
We didn't scare you off last year. You're
Nope,
back for a second time.
back again.
Awesome. And also Ben Bongratz from Grainger. Welcome in for your first time.
Thank you.
So both of you presented separately on SAP and Agile methodologies, and this is a great topic. Doesn't get a lot of play, I think, but
Right.
can really be important. Maybe we'll start off with you. Melody, what are some of the fears or reasons why people hesitate to go the Agile route or even start talking about it when it comes to SAP implementations?
Sure, when you first start off, people worry that agile projects will go on forever, that they're never going to end, and they're going to cost a lot of money because they're never going to end. So there's a lot of hesitation on starting it because they feel like there's no end in sight when that's not really the case at all. And agile projects do end. You will have a successful result. You actually will get working software faster to you. You can actually tangible software that you can use and see it benefit from right away. So I think some of the fears are really that I want to make sure I can control my costs, my scope, and get something delivered. And there's just a general fear that maybe that's not going to happen with Agile, which isn't the case.
But is it also because it's SAP and we think of SAP as these monster complex projects? Is that also?
Sure.
I mean, if we're not designing a website here, you're talking about core systems.
Sure. A lot of SAP implementations can take a year or more. There's a lot of stories out there, and it does work with SAP implementations. It absolutely can happen. I think it's just a little bit scary for folks to think about that at first.
Yep.
But yeah, absolutely, you can have a roadmap and really get that team integrated so you have a solution even faster.
Then Agile can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. What did it mean to Grainger? How did you guys approach it from your point of view?
So Agile is definitely that umbrella term that covers a different number of different methodologies. What we're doing primarily is Scrum at Grainger. So we have broken down into different teams within the different modules within SAP. So the team that I'm leading currently is within the CRM area.
Okay.
And what we're doing is building solutions for the sales force and trying to get out to them as fast as we can. So that's the flavor that we're using currently.
Why did you think, or it could work? I mean, why did you think it could work in this particular area?
Well, we had a specific timeline that we couldn't meet with the traditional method. So we had something that had to get out sooner than we could do with the traditional waterfall method. So we decided, let's try to get a piece out using Agile and Scrum, and we found great success with it and actually continued on.
Did you need to get more resources, or how did you, did people just know Scrum? I mean, like, how did you, I mean, everyone knows waterfall pretty much.
Right.
It's,
Right.
but for this particular flavor you were using, how did you figure out that it would, might work?
So we brought in some external trainers.
Okay.
We had different classes on it. So it's a very different mindset. So we had to actually educate people on how to start to think differently and really start to approach things from an Agile perspective. So there was quite a bit of mind shift that we had to start.
Melody, did you have that as well?
Yeah, at Pacific Coast we love Agile, so we use it in our everyday practice. But certainly for big implementations, you have a hurdle to overcome with, hey, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through the scope.
Right.
We're going to get everybody on the same page. You have that terminology that people aren't used to, and wait a minute, as a project team, I'm talking to you every day,
Right.
and we're checking in every single day. Well, yeah, that's a little bit different than your traditional projects.
Aren't you supposed to just go away and then bring something back? So were there some eye-opening moments for people not familiar with how it works on the project?
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is so great about Agile, regardless of the approach that you use, Scrum, Kanban, any other solutions, there is such a partnership between the IT organization and the business because you're working together, you're constantly communicating, you're going over the scope, you're saying, hey, is this the right thing? Are we going after the right picture? Do you want to tweak it? And it gives that business the flexibility to not know every single requirement up front. I mean,
Right.
how many businesses can tell you to the T to the letter what they want their SAP system to look like
Right.
6 months before you have it? So it allows that business person to have a relationship with IT and know that they can work through all of those details on the requirements.
Right. And, go ahead.
So I think one of the biggest changes we saw was that the business was really surprised that we were there for them when they had new requirements that came up. So we didn't say we need to know everything from day one. We were able to go back and actually implement other things that came up as we continued the journey. So it was a big eye-opener for the business.
Because you don't want it to be perceived as just an IT thing, right? You
Right.
know, oh yeah, the guys in IT want to do this, but we don't know what it is. Can't have that at all.
No.
Correct.
It's definitely a partnership.
Mhm.
You know, really, I think in traditional projects there might be a little bit of mistrust because at the beginning, you know, the IT folks are looking for the business to detail out every single requirement so they know what that scope is so that they can hit it, and you know they will make it happen. And then the business side says, well, I'm going to dump every single thing on you because I want to make sure I get what I need in the end.
Right.
Where an agile approach is, okay, let's talk about the scope. What kind of picture are we painting? Okay, here's our first step. Now let's just focus on that first step. What are those requirements? How can we be the best at delivering that scope to you?
Right.
And then it'll crank out more and more and more, and then over time you end up building that big picture, and it's a better quality product.
In the end, I mean, is that both of you found that? Ben, have you found that as well?
Absolutely. The flexibility that you have from the start allows you to actually make changes and maintain that quality, but give the business exactly what they're looking for by the time you're finished with it. So the business can change their mind at any point, but you're going to give exactly what they need in the long term.
Are there any danger warning signs that you should be aware of that, you know, maybe this isn't right? I mean, have you, either of you experienced that where you tried to use Agile and maybe it wasn't right for this project and you changed it? Does that happen ever, or do you just commit and go?
Generally speaking, we try to figure out the approach up front that will work best for that project, that scope. There's certainly projects that might better align with a waterfall approach, and you just recognize that up front and say this isn't a candidate for that. I think if you run into an agile project, because you're constantly communicating, you can work on that scope and get that project delivered. And so you're not going to run into the major, huge roadblock because you're constantly evolving throughout that project process. So
Right.
those major gotchas aren't going to happen as much in an agile project. But up front, it's important to understand which methodology is going to suit the culture of the business and the project deliverables that you have in place.
Does the users or the business side have to make an equal commitment as well? I mean, because it all sounds well and good at the outset, but if they don't want to take a call every day or they don't want to get on Skype or whatever, Ben, how did you go about?
So that was a commitment we had to make up front with the business. We had to explain to them, we're going to try something different, we're going to make some changes, and there is a time commitment and involvement that you guys will need. The trade-off, though, is they don't have to know everything up front. So we're going to learn as we go, we're going to educate both sides of the shop. So what we found in the long run, there was more time commitment, but there wasn't as much pressure on the business or as IT. So actually, in the long run, both sides really enjoyed it.
What was the time commitment? Do how often would they have to be?
So we have a 15-minute daily stand-up, so they're there for that. We have different ceremonies that range anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. So they'll be involved with the reviews, retrospectives. There's also some planning that we do. So it's not a huge amount of time. There's also questions that come up, but all told, it's probably 3 to 5 hours per week. And our sprints are 2 weeks long, so it's not a huge amount of time, and they don't have to write giant requirement documents. So
Right.
it gets them off the hook.
So what happens to the requirement documents in an Agile project?
So certainly for an agile approach, you're really valuing the quality of the product and not so much on the documentation, but it doesn't mean there's nothing.
Right.
So you still need to have a clear, concise requirements, but it might be something that's more like a bullet pointed list of these are the features that are important to me. This is the priority of those features, and so you know what to attack first, second, third. A lot of times you'll even just come up with the screenshots or mock views on whatever it is that you're working on in your project, and you use that as your requirements document. So it's a different way of looking at it versus maybe a big, long Excel grid with all sorts of detailed requirements and scenarios and things like that. It's really more flexible so that you can focus on the quality of the product that's going to come out of the project.
But the business side will also say, I want that requirements document, so at the end, if you guys don't, I can, put this in your face. Was it hard to get that out of their hands, or maybe like a safety blanket kind of for them?
Well, the nice thing was, because we were with the business every step of the way, they were able to make direction changes. So there were other things that came in, other requirements that were no longer needed. We shifted gears and went in a totally different direction for a sprint or two, but it was really up to the business. So at the end, wherever we ended up was because the business was charting the course.
Okay. Well, as we wrap up here, your best one piece of advice for a fellow ASUG member said, hey, watching this kind of sounds good, would be, your advice to start? Where should they go?
They you absolutely just have to go for it and try it. There's definitely a lot of tools available online and research. Agile Manifesto is a great place just to start to understand the basics, and then you can kind of evolve from there. I recommend starting with a project that maybe isn't the hot political potato. Don't start with that one. Start with an easy, a friendly project. Maybe it's just a simple enhancement on a website. And a kind of SAP enhancement, things like that. Start from there and just try it out and use that as a pilot and an example, learn from it, and you're going to continually evolve into a really well-run Agile team.
Great. Ben, anything to add?
The only thing I'd say is make sure you're not afraid to fail at something, and if it's not working for you, switch methodologies, try something different, but always continue to try to do what you can.
Right. Well, thanks very much to both of you for coming
Absolutely.
in. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Stay tuned on asugnews.com for more interviews live from ASUG Annual Conference and Sapphire Now. And thank you very much for watching.